My name is Terrence Favors. I am the YALI coordinator at the Department of State in the Bureau of African Affairs, and it is always my honor and pleasure to be here at the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit, as I said this morning. And today, I'm even more excited that we've got three of your colleagues here who are going to share a bit of their experience with the YALI network. So can I get a quick show of hands of how many people are familiar with the YALI network? And I don't just mean like YALI alumni, but the actual digital YALI network that does information campaigns throughout the year. Can we get some hands up? Okay, all right, so we've got about half of the room, or others are feeling a little bit full from lunch. They didn't raise their hands, but that's okay. But we are here to talk about the YALI network. And from the diagram that you see on the presentation, as well as on the banners behind us, there are really three main components to YALI. The Mandela Washington Fellowship is often the most well-known component, and it's the one that you're all here for today, where we've got now 6,500 alumni. Tomorrow, once you all become alumni, we'll be up to 7,200. But we also have the regional leadership centers. Can I get a raise of hands of how many people have participated in one of the regional leadership centers in Dakar, Accra, Nairobi, or Johannesburg? Hands up, a couple? Pretoria, I'm sorry. I always say Johannesburg, Pretoria. All right, great. So we've got some folks. So those three programs make up the Young African Leaders Initiative. And when we combine all of those, we've got more than 600,000 people who are connected to YALI in some way. And each of you, since you're sitting in this room, you know the impact that YALI can have. And for our folks on the stage here, we have invited them to join us because they have also been active members of the YALI network, where even before becoming Mandela Washington Fellows, they were taking advantage of the resources that were there. So I'd like to first start off by introducing them, telling you a little bit about them, then we'll have them tell you some more about their work, and we're all going to connect this to the topic of volunteerism and community-based organizations. For those of you who are following the YALI network, and you can follow us on our social media channels and also by subscribing, we'll go through that at the end to receive our emails, we are in the middle of our YALI Serves campaign. Each year in July, around Mandela Day, we do a campaign that focuses on community service, encouraging people to participate in community service activities, lead and organize their own activities, and really get to understand the importance of volunteerism. So that's what our panel is about today. And so I will start by introducing Olive Inwanmuntu. Did I get it close this time? Okay, sorry. I did. Inwamunu. Sorry. We switched seats earlier. I made us switch seats. Sorry. Inwamunu. And she's from Rwanda. She runs her own organization that focuses on an initiative focused on farming and gender equality in rural areas. So today she's going to tell us a bit more about the work that she does. And she also works with teen mothers and women and girls in these disadvantaged areas. We also have Esther Nduta, who's sitting on the far side here. Esther is joining us from Kenya. Okay, I see. She brought the entire Kenyan delegation with her. We need to call the Rwandans to come and join us here, right? Okay, she brought her cohort. Thank you. This is when you have them in those big groups, right? All right. So Esther is a specialist in social entrepreneurship and food technology and project management. Esther is the co-founder of Blue Firms Investment, and she also works on empowering women and girls to be small-scale farmers. She also co-founded the Orimbo Mashimani CBO, where she works on mentoring school-age girls with a focus on sexual reproductive education and leadership and career development. And then we've got Laji Kone from Côte d'Ivoire, who is... Oh, wow, okay. Côte d'Ivoire is in the room here, present, right? So Laji is an industrial draftsman working on waste transformation. He is also the co-founder of Demotics, which is an industrial software training program that works with students and professionals. So with that, I just want to quickly allow each person to tell you a bit more about what they do in their own words, but also explain to us how they were motivated to start their organization and why they did so. So let's go ahead and start with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olive Nyinaumono. Nyinaumono means a mother of someone. I work with an organization called Nyinaumono Initiative that works on gender equality and inclusion by focusing on economic empowerment for young girls and women, particularly teenage mothers. What we do, we provide vocational training in tailoring and crafting, for them to be able to start their own income-generating activities so they can be able to support their kids as well as their family and themselves, either paying school fees for their kids, health insurance. The motivation of starting this initiative comes from my personal history. When I was born, my mom was 17, and you can imagine how a young girl can get pregnant and give birth. Too much responsibilities, but also add in rural areas where there's no much opportunities, no much infrastructure. A baby would suffer from malnutrition, no health insurance, no education, and even the community abandon that person, take her as a curse to the family. When I was finishing my college, I went an opportunity to go to YALI Regional Leadership Center, East Africa, meet different people from different countries, see them giving back to their communities. That's where it was like, what could I do to give back to my community? Then the idea comes in first was to give back to the other teen mothers who are suffering from the way my mom was suffered. Because what I realized is that if my mom was able to support me for basic and needs and wants, I would be not able to go away from her to be raised with another family who were able to support me. So ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to empower young girls, particularly teenage mothers, for economic empowerment, for them to be able to support themselves and their kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Laji.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Laji Ahmed Kone, and I'm from Cote d'Ivoire. I have been in the University of Notre Dame in the business track. I start one of my business, which is Eka Services, is a training center only focusing on industrial softwares. You know, when I start on 2021, and they asked me if I'm able to use industrial softwares because you do this work with industrial softwares only, and I wasn't able. Even if my field of study was in electromechanic, they didn't train us this software. And we got a lot of feedback from students and also friends. We said, I applied for this job, but the company asked me, am I able to use industrial softwares? And when I said no, they said, unfortunately, we can't hire you because we need someone able to use those software. So we found that this is an opportunity for business, but also it's an opportunity to improve the employment status in my country. Then I and my colleague, we start the business training, and this training was only focusing on industrial software. And for this year, we train at least 50 students from the civic engineering fields where they get the basic skills about how to use industrial software in their work. And a part of that, I'm also passionate about implementing energy efficiency solution because I said I'm an industrial draftsman, I design machines, but I noticed also that companies are working, but we've had much regardless according to their carbon footprint. And I think also this is a gap. We have to overcome this gap to find solution to this issue. This is why I start thinking about how we can implement energy efficiency solution in order to contribute to reduce our carbon footprint in the world. Thanks.
Esther.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Esther Nyekirin Duta from Kenya. I am a food scientist and technologist by profession. And the reason I started my two organizations, I start with Urembo Mashinani, is because I was a girl in desperate need of mentorship. And from that, I know how many women, and especially girls aged between the ages of 12 to 18, crave that mentorship, especially from the marginalized communities. I come from rural Kenya, and I know that people are not so willing to go back and give back. And if somebody was willing to do that for me, I would not have had to navigate life on my own. And I don't want a girl to navigate life on her own if I'm in a position to help. And secondly, the reason I started Blue Farms is because if you're in Africa, we know our food comes from small-scale holder farmers, and that's why we struggle with food insecurity, and we have to unionize the farmers in order to grow homogeneously, in order to ensure that every African is food secure. So the organization is centered on women. I come from a single-parent household, and I know my mother struggled to educate her 3 kids on a farm that was less than 3 acres of land. And so I decided that these are the women I want to work with. These are the women I want to empower. I want to increase the yield they produce and increase efficiency and make sure that they are compensated fairly for their food produce. We claim we are an agricultural-backed economy in Kenya, and yet farmers are the poorest people in my country, and that cannot continue to be the case. That's why I'm very passionate about empowering farmers and, most importantly, empowering women. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the through line through each of your comments is that you identified a need within your community and you saw something that needed to be done and decided that you were the one to do it. And I think thinking about to some of the comments we heard from the panel this morning, I'm so glad that you have done that. So thank you for doing that work. And I think one question that I'd like to start with is you each chose to either use a combination of for-profit social entrepreneurship or even volunteer-based community organizations to address these needs. Can you talk about why you decided to work with volunteers and develop a community-based approach to addressing these issues, or a combination, as you've done? So we'll start with you, Olive.
I decided to work in a community organization because that's where I was seeing my passion. I realized the need in a community that has a connection with my personal life. Working with teen mothers is not only working, it's also a passion to me because I take these teen mothers as my mother. So I see a connection between me and them. I think that's the only thing that connects me to that organization, but also giving back to my community, contributing to the development of the country, especially putting up women. Sure.
Aji.
For myself, starting working for a community, I think, personally, is a personal conviction. If you want to work for your community, is normal. Myself, I think, is a personal conviction to give back to the community. I work for a company. This is to generate profit. But a part of that, what is the impact for the community? I think about that, and I start my ICA Services Training Center. Of course, I'm impacting the life of students. They are always students, but at the end of the training, they know, of course, the government provide me training, but a part of that, I also get another training which can be benefits for me because I'm able to be higher than others who don't get this training. This is one of the part of community services. But I also work with association, government association, because I think you cannot be only saying that this is my own life, I have to work only for me. I have to think about the community. What is the impact I want to do in my life? And the things I always take to comfort myself is that if you think that you are too small to change anything in the world, just close yourself with a mosquito in the room and you will see the impact. Yes.
Thank you. Esther.
The reason I chose for my organization to be a social enterprise is because I believe if I empowered one woman, I will empower an entire generation. Because I have seen the need for rural development, and I know that once women are the heart of the household and they will do the best for their children. I also come from a society where, unfortunately, men have turned into alcoholism, and that's an issue that also needs to be addressed, and we have a lot of young people who are also willing to go and give back to the community, hence why we bring in people from universities, from career women to also address and mentor the young girls that we mentor. So a lot of people are willing to give back, and that is the opportunity that Urembo Mashinani offers them, because we cannot all start our own small organizations to give back, so we try to bring people together to work as a collective to maximize on the impact. Thank you.
Great. And I think Thank you all for those. And I think that idea that it's not just what one person can do, but how you can help multiply that effect, and that even if you're looking at a private sector or a for-profit objective, that building the community and strengthening the community, as you've talked about, Laji, with those skills, and as you've talked about with the skills and the financing to do farming, that we can do so much more, and that it really is important to kind of marry together those for-profit and volunteer-based initiatives that we're doing, and I appreciate that. And I think something else that we've seen with our YALI Serves campaign is just the importance of managing an organization, that even though it's not a for-profit business, it still requires a certain amount of organization. It requires you to look at your finances, look at the resources that you have, to attract talent to come and help you. And so I want to shift to talk a bit more about that, how you've focused on those pieces, the kind of mechanics of running an organization. And also if you can talk about the impact that volunteerism has on people. And I'm going to add one more question. I know I've asked lots of questions here, but I think something else I want to say is, as we were preparing for YALI Serves, we had some conversations on our team about what does volunteerism mean in Africa. And so I'm also curious to hear, after your time here in the US on the fellowship, knowing that each institute has included community service as a part of the program, how you see the difference or the similarities of volunteerism in the US and Africa. So let's start with the last question first, and we'll come back to the other one. So volunteerism in the US versus Africa. What can you share, Olive, from your experience now?
From my experience, I think volunteerism in America is more than in Africa, because most of the organizations that I visited, they are working with volunteers daily basis. But back home, most of the people are employees. And I would advise to work as a volunteer, because that's where you get to give from your heart. You give back to your community from volunteerism. Rather than working from Monday up to Sunday because of salary or because of time, that comes as responsibilities. But when it comes to volunteerism, you give it with your whole heart, with your whole body, and it even gives you an empathic habit for you. So I would advise to be a volunteer, because it's not only being a volunteer, but also getting experiences. I will talk this about, because when you finish high school or college, looking for a job, people ask you experience. And you have been in school from Monday up to Sunday for years. Where do you get experience? So if you start volunteering at early ages, that's where you get experience. And when people asking you, where is your experience? Will be like, I'll be volunteering in YALI initiative, I'll be volunteering in YALI, I'll be volunteering this and this and this. Then you have like what to put on the table. That's where you get to be in front of other people who haven't been volunteering. So for me, volunteerism is a huge opportunity, and I would advise everyone to do that. So,
sure. Thank you so much. All right, Laji, would you like to add anything to that?
Okay. Being that I work in an association, we do a volunteering activities. And I noticed that here in America is including in any daily life of Americans. Back in home, I think this is something we can improve, because we have also volunteering, and is more from youth Ivorian was doing that. And I think we can improve that. We can seek for how to combine youth organization volunteering activities and to implement this in the government program, because it's very impactful. So this is the thing I want to give back to my country. Yeah.
Esther.
I think volunteerism for me means doing something for somebody who cannot do something for me in return. And I think it's a necessary and mandatory part of each and every of our lives. And in the US, I realize it's a very streamlined system from the government to organizations. I'll give a case in point. I volunteered for Table to Table, and the government enables people to volunteer in the sense that the giving, it's made easier because the system allows it. And I hope to see that back home in Kenya. So yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I know that we are getting close on time, and I would like to have an opportunity for the audience to ask some questions. I can keep going all day, but we've got a couple of folks with microphones. If anyone would like to ask a question, so we've got one there. Raise your hand. Let's go ahead.
Hi, Terrence. My name is Tendai Banda. I'm from US Embassy, Malawi. Sorry, 2017 fellow, not like a 2024. My question for the two panelists is to say that I know the US government has done a lot of investments in creating resources on the YALI network. So were there any resources that you have used from the YALI network? If not, maybe are there any tips that you can share with your fellows, as in what resources they can tap from the YALI network? Thank you.
Question. Excellent question. Go ahead.
Okay, for me, I use one of the YALI network tools, which is the project planning toolkit. I use it to plan my project for the implementation. This was one of the part, and one of the biggest thing I'm also happy about that is the YALI template for interview. I had to apply for one of the Harvard leadership program, and I used the YALI template interview to see how I have to introduce myself during the interview, how to be during the interview. And I was selected just because I used the templates, you know. So there's a lot of toolkits, tools on courses also on the YALI network. And my project, I said I'm passionate about implementing energy efficiency solution. And I follow one of the courses on the YALI network, which is the climate smart entrepreneurship. This was a driving force for my passion for energy efficiency also.
So I want to again say thank you. I will quickly click on a couple of slides. If you have not visited yali.state.gov, this is our website. On the right-hand side, some of those resources that Laji mentioned can be found there by clicking either on the resources section or on the topics section, finding those courses. I think we have a wide variety of courses that focus on business, on entrepreneurship, community development, as well as public management. And some of those own self-development and personal leadership development courses are some of our most popular. Often for the YALI Professionals series is the one that we get a lot of response from. So if you are not yet a YALI Network member, please do visit yali.state.gov. If you fill out the little form there, you will become a member. You'll start receiving emails from us, and we also ask that you follow us on our social media accounts on Twitter and Facebook. So let's give one final round of applause for our fantastic panelists today. Thank you all so much. I think anytime I get to listen to our fellows, our network members, I'm inspired, and I think hearing the words that our Assistant Secretary said this morning about the importance of people doing things for the good of their community and not just for themselves, that you all exemplify that, and I really appreciate everything that you've done for your communities and everything else and everyone else, because each of you has done something for your community. So thank you for being here, and we will turn things over to the next panel. Take care.